Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a story about the craziest day at work, even though our OP didn't even know it was his first shift. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Sir, may I see your authority to enter? Many years ago, I had succumbed to a patriotic fever and enlisted in the Air National Guard. As such, I went to basic training. Yes, it's the same basic training the real Air Force goes to. Anyway, one of the first bits of training they try to hammer into your skull is the importance of the dorm guard, DG. DG is responsible for controlling who has access to the dormitories, reporting head count to night watch, and making sure nobody's slitting their wrists in the bathroom or starting fires. It's a very easy job, but trainees regularly F it up because they can't think straight in a military training environment. If someone knocks on the door, the DG has to verify their ID against a list on the back door. No ID, no entry. If ID is presented but there's no matching name on the list, no entry. There are only two exceptions. If the person requesting entry has a key and uses the key in the lock because holding it up to the window to show you you're a key holder isn't good enough. Yes, one trainee learned this the hard way. Or the person requesting entry can use a known code word, but this will only happen in an actual emergency and isn't part of the training experience. To quote my MTL, military training leader, if Osama bin Laden shows up to the door armed with an RPG and wrapped head to toe in dynamite and he gives you the code word, let the effer in and stay out of his way. Everyone will do DG duty and you should expect to be tested. They will yell and threaten you, try to trick you, intimidate you, and beat on the door mercilessly. But the protocol is gospel. Basic is a head game. They aren't allowed to physically touch you, so you're never in any actual danger. All danger simulated by big bad sergeants yelling. I had the advantage of being almost 10 years older than the average trainee. I celebrated my 28th birthday during BMT. I've been yelled at before. It doesn't bother me. In the middle of the night, and I'm on duty, I do a head count, 51 people present, 50 people assigned. This means either I miscounted or someone is here that isn't assigned to be here, not to mention whoever did the count before me has been effing it up. I recount 51 instead of 50 and call it into the MTL on duty, not our regular MTL, via the loud squawk box intercom on the wall, which everyone in the dorm can hear. Me. Sir, trainee Yaus reports as ordered, blah blah blah, other crap I had to report. Head count 50 assigned, 51 accounted for. MTL. What was that head count again? Me. Sir, 50 assigned, 51 accounted for. MTL. Wrong. Count them again. Now, I've already checked and double-checked, and I've already assumed that this was a paperwork error and not my error, but they want me to follow orders and procedures, so that's what I'll do. I recount and report. Sir, 50 assigned, 51 accounted for. So help me, trainee, if I have to come up there because you can't count, I will choke you to death with your reflective belt and bury you in the parade ground with the flagpole up your butt. Now get everybody up, sound off one by one so I can effing hear it. By now, almost everyone's awake anyway, so everyone begins to sound off. 1, sir. 2, sir. 3, sir. 49, sir. 50, sir. Cut to the last guy, shaking his head because he's scared of what he knows is coming next. 51, sir. Gee, D-it! One of you useless Fs is gonna die tonight. I'm effing coming up there. The dorm's a 2-minute walk from the CQ, charge of quarters. He was there in about 9 seconds banging on the door. But being as mad as he was, he stormed over without his key, his ID, and had apparently forgotten the fact that there was a single word that would open the door instantly. He was focused on fixing whatever was jacked up with my head count. Banging on the door. Open up! Sir, may I see your authority to enter? I just got off the comm with you. Let me the F in. Sir, without valid ID, I'm forced to refer you to CQ for authorization. Are you effing crapping me? I'm the CQ. Cut your crap and open the effing door. Sir, without valid ID, I cannot allow you to access the dorm. Please contact CQ for authorization. By now, the other trainees are nervous. Some are telling me to open the door, while others are insisting I keep it shut. Perhaps indefinitely, because the sergeant sounds like he may actually end someone's life tonight. I stick to the program and we go back and forth like this a few more times. I've honestly never had anyone this angry with me in my life. but all my replies are literally written on the back of the door, so I keep reading them to him, which only makes him madder and madder each time. By now, it's been 20 minutes since first count, and he's used up every threat and insult at his disposal and is forced to stop and think. He remembers the code word. Code word! I open the door immediately. He bolts past me with only the slightest pause for some direct eye contact, which sent the message that he would be back shortly to harvest my flesh for a new suit he was going to make, and he begins to count. 51. Who of you is not supposed to be here? Silence. Then, from the last bunk, sir? It's a guy we don't recognize. All our counting thus far took place in the dark. Until the sergeant was in the room and he turned the lights on, we had no idea. It turns out this kid had graduated the day before but needed to be warehoused for a few weeks while he waited for his next training assignment to begin. He was supposed to be there, but since he wasn't on our roster, he was not included in the head count. Promises of extreme punishment were issued, and we were told that this wasn't over and that the morning would be terrible for all of us, especially me. At 05:30, I was called on the carpet to explain why I refused to allow the sergeant to perform his duties. I stated plainly and simply that there were protocols and procedures in place for me to follow. I'd been told never to deviate and that I would be tested. I'd perform my duties to the best of my abilities. They could find no fault with this, and I was never punished. My military training leader, not the one from Night Watch, later quietly congratulated me for sticking to the protocol. Ultimately, it reflected well on both of us. And our last story. I grew up in a small community on an island off the coast of a thriving metropolitan area. It had its ups and downs, but was generally a pretty quiet sort of life. The community had a fairly large immigrant population from various European countries, and one of those was, well, let's call him John. John the Builder. He and his numerous brothers had all moved to the island together and started a construction company. John was a big, affable man, easygoing and always smiling. He spoke excellent English, but with a thick accent. Sometimes people assumed his accent meant his grasp of business was lacking, but usually not for long. Within a decade or so of moving there, John and his brothers were pretty much the only builders of note on the island, and anything bigger than a garden shed would go through them. Around that time, my granddad retired and moved to the island with my grandma. He contracted John to help him build his retirement house, and they bonded over the mutual appreciation of a really good concrete mix and pour. By then, John's family were good friends of ours too, so John and my granddad kept in touch regularly and would often get into involved discussions of building methods and the like. Some years later, the old couple running the main petrol station in town decided to sell out and retire. The place was bought by Big Fuel Company. Big Fuel Company decided that the quaint old station and garage was in dire need of a complete makeover and modernization and drew up plans accordingly. After putting the work out for tender, they grudgingly accepted that with the cost of relocating a labor force from the mainland to the island for the work, John's construction firm was by far the most cost-effective. They weren't too happy about it, though, and made it clear that they thought John and his brothers were a bunch of rural cowboys who couldn't be trusted to nail two planks together. Still, the contracts were signed, and the blueprints delivered to John. As well as the usual amenities, the new station was to have a high, artistically stylish roof over the fuel pumps held up by two support pillars. You know the sort of thing. John reads the plans, thought about the stiff sea breezes the location was subject to, and frowned. He took the blueprints around to my granddad and discussed them. Possibly not entirely within the bounds of the contract, but John was concerned. The next day, John rang Big Fuel Company's contact and said in his thick accent, "This roof isn't going to stand up. The support pillar footings are too shallow, and the roof itself is too large for pillars of that size. Plus, you haven't factored in the strength of the winds we get here. Everything else is fine, but you need to redesign that roof." "Rubbish," scoffed the Big Fuel Company guy. "We had it designed by a very exclusive architect, and our engineers signed off on it. It's fine. You don't know what you're talking about." "Maybe," said John, "but I've been building here for 20 years, and I think you should go over the design again." "Don't be ridiculous. You're just trying to get the contract extended. We don't need to check the design. Now get to building." Click. John, being a genuinely nice bloke, thought that maybe this was just one person being difficult, and also felt that this sort of thing should probably be in writing, He sat down and wrote a clear letter expressing his concerns about the fuel pump shelter and sent it overnight to the big fuel company office on the mainland. The next day, he got a call from the big fuel company office from someone further up the ranks. "Who the hell is this? Who do you think you are trying to tell our architects and engineers they don't know what they're doing? You're only a builder. What the hell do you know? Just build the damn thing." "Could you put that in writing, please?" asked John. This is the point at which a sensible manager would be given pause. When the contractor specifically asks for it in writing, you should probably ask why. "Fine," snarls the big fuel company guy, and faxes through a terse note that he'd read the letter and considered it mistaken and to get on with the construction. John shrugged, carefully filed the note, and went ahead with the build. A little over a month later, the new station was finished, roof and all. On a pleasant, gusty day, perfect for sailing, the big fuel company bigwigs flew over to see the result. Standing there with John and a curious crowd of locals, they watched as the shiny new stylish roof danced and swayed in the wind in a manner decidedly unlikely to reassure anyone thinking of refueling their car underneath this. "What the F is this?" inquired the big fuel company boss. "Just what I tried to warn you about," replied John. "Bullcrap! You effed up the construction and now you're trying to pin it on us. We're not paying for this. You're going to need to tear it down at your expense and build it right." "It's built exactly to your blueprints," said John. "If you want it rebuilt, you have to pay for it, preferably with a new design." "Not a chance. This is on you. And if you try and dodge responsibility for it, we'll sue." "Sounds good," said John. "See you in court." So the fuel station was cordoned off, and legal proceedings went ahead. I don't know much about them, but at some point I do know something like this happened. Judge: "Defense, you may call your first expert witness." John's lawyer: "Thank you, Your Honor. We'll call Professor Thornay's granddad, internationally recognized civil engineer who chaired the report into the redacted bridge collapse and was head of engineering at redacted university for 25 years. Big fuel company's legal team." John's lawyer: "Thank you for joining us, Professor. Would you please tell the court how you first learned of the project in question?" My granddad: "Of course. John first approached me with his concerns directly after receiving the blueprints. I agreed with his assessment and have since drawn up a brief report on the problems of the roof design. The details and supporting calculations are in pages 4 through 16, but if you don't mind, I'll just read from the summary. I noted the following problems." Big fuel company's legal team: "Oh, crap." What with that and the note John had, it didn't take long to be settled. Big fuel company was on the hook for all of it, plus legal fees. They had to pay John to tear down the unstable roof and build a new one, designed by a different architect and checked by off-site engineers. Nonetheless, when John got the new plans, he rang Big Fuel Company and said, "Hope you don't mind. I'm going to run these past the prof before we get started." Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.